But now we get to see the Master of Shadows in the mid lane. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, this should be so exciting. A big assassin angle in the mid lane now. This is, of course, before 12-14, so some of those lane sustain nerfs have not actually come through yet. I wonder if this is a bit of that solo queue good feeling leaking into the pro game a little bit. We have seen it with the Alistar, I feel like, as well. But either way, it's just going to be so cool to see what Mega Man can do here on a signature pick.
So what this signals to me now is AXIZ have side lane options. You have a Gwen and you have a Zed, and you just kind of shove them into the matchup that you want them to be in. And if AXIZ are good at your lane allocation, they can play the wider map. Now, this isn't something that AXIZ and the wider LJL roster have been able to do very much. We typically like to set up around objectives, and that's not something, therefore, if you play around side lanes, which is kind of more commonplace, right? You're kind of only looking at someone like DFM who have done that more often than not. And often they do that with big globals. They'll do that with something like a Twisted Fate or a Nocturne or a number of other champions that they've played. So this will be a bit against the regional identity from AXIZ. I also think it's a little bit difficult for them because you are playing against a roaming Alistar. If he turns up to a play, it's very hard to kill him, especially post level 6. You're playing against an Akali, who's incredibly hard to shut down. And you're going to have a Spellbook Exhaust on Talia, who's your other target in those side lanes, who, if you get Boots of Lucidity, is going to be getting so much Exhaust cooldown and other defensive summoner cooldown, it's going to be quite difficult to shut down that champion. So, for me, this is going to be a question of how much can AXIZ show us on a side lane game, and can CGA just force AXIZ to come to objectives, because that's where AXIZ comp doesn't thrive.
Yeah, and it's going to be so wild to see who's going to be affecting those side lanes, specifically the bottom lane. I feel like you were highlighting it in the Champion Select that CGA, often the hybrid show, right? So we've seen the game plan in solo queue. You take this assassin, you shove out, and you go and feast on the AD carry on repeat. Feels like a very savvy pickup here to keep this Zeri from popping off and secure a golden road for your Sivir moving forward. And it all starts with these junglers, right? They're clearing from top to bot. I expect we're going to see some action down there being forced real soon.
Yeah. So, top lane's going to be a bit of an island. No early ganks onto this lane, but I think both these champions are fairly slippery. Even without Flash, they're so safe. That's just a terrifying thing. That's just not modern League of Legends, folks. Top lanes don't actually need defensive summoners. They just run away from you, and they're fine. But that will be something to track, of course, where these junglers first make their impact felt. Kassin, when he came into the league, we talked about Mega Man. When he came into the league, we were wondering whether this guy was going to pick up the Zed, pick up his main champions. Kassin, on his way into the league, was a huge Xin Zhao player. This was before Xin Zhao was as meta as it was. He actually played it before that champion really came back onto the pro scene. And this has been a hallmark champion for this player for quite a while now, having that early aggression, the ability to make his presence felt early on into the game. As it stands right now, though, his bot lane has been shoving in. They get vision. What that means is that Kassin has a better platform to make plays about the place instead. And he takes that scuttle and is immediately looking for a fight.
Yeah, this is what we were expecting out of good old Kassin coming into this game. Does get that bot Scuttle Crab, so Swamp immediately pinging. Gotta run up to that top river and try and trade evenly here. But thankfully, I think for both of these AD carries, they breathe a sigh of relief. No early action in the bot lane. They can continue just ticking down those calls.
Sits there looking at Skada and Xin Zhao brandishing their weapons, and they're just like, I have a cull. I'm not helping here.
I'm reaping. Please come back when it is time for me to sow. I'd appreciate it greatly.
It's literally just sat there watching the junglers like firepower, and then you know that meme, which is the it's like it ain't much, but it's honest work. That's just the AD carries just somewhere off, like sipping a brew.
Yeah, that's a bit of empathy from a top lane main to an AD carry. It feels like we're both very much stuck in these very specific expectations, and it's just our duty to fulfill them, even when it's not fun. And you know what seems like it's not very fun, Nymera, is playing a Gwen versus a Kali matchup.
So, you say that, but Gwen got the early shove in, and it's not like he's going for it.
Yeah, Mega Man under turret, but the exhaust, as you pointed out, doing so much with the ignite. The last kick, he actually gets it! Flash the shades! Mega Man absolutely styling, skill issue for sure. No luck whatsoever. Mega Man the superior player here on the Zed.
One Trick Pony takes it down to one last tick. The minions helping out. I actually wonder if Kaken hadn't walked up to look for the last bit of damage, whether he would have lived. This came down to minion auto attacks. This reminds me a lot of when Faker used to play the champion, where he would go for these early tower dives on Zed. It's not what we've seen in pro play for a while. I mean, Megaman doesn't even get the double shuriken. If you get double shuriken here, it gets even worse. But look at this. One minion auto. Legitimately, if Kaken doesn't walk up, I think he lives because that minion doesn't hit him. I think that's a slight miscalculation, but it is the finest of lines. And Megaman on this assassin gets first blood.
Yeah, that is so huge. We'll be able to hopefully start rolling that snowball down the hill off the back of this momentum. Going to take a little while to catch up on this wave that did just get shoved in and equalize the CS, however, so that opens up Kakun to come down here with Kasin, always looking for these aggressive angles into the opposing jungle. Swamp wants to see if they go in on the Gromp. There it goes. Will it reset? Nemo coming around. I don't know if Swamp wants this one. Dicey now coming as well.
So the thing is, Wave isn't under tower from CGA, so they can't force the bot lane from doing this.
Yeah, it's going to be Kasin now deep within enemy territory, trying to find this backline, now trying to get on out of dodge. Oh my goodness, that boomerang blade doesn't take his life, and now it's Megaman in the thick of things. He is going to get chunked out. He is going to get zapped into oblivion, but Zinzao will be the trade. It's a 1-for-1 there.
So 1-for-1, but Megaman is dead. And this is important in this case because even though Megaman won that last fight, Kasim is starting to get sorry, not Kasim, Kakun. I'm gonna get that messed up so much first time casting these two on the ref, but you're getting to the point now where Megaman's been forced out of lane for a while. Speaking of top lane, solo kill coming in for Nap while we're talking about the implications on the rest of it. That matchup, which I said maybe not so much of a counter anymore, Nap says, shut up, let me get those kills.
Yeah, and we will get this little flashback into how exactly this whole skirmish did go down. And Kasin going to get that Gromp healing pretty huge, but then it's going to just be the split up, right? Where it's like two deep agents under enemy territory. And
two big facts which come to this is one that we picked out, bot lane wave isn't actually under tower. So that means that AXIZ bot lane can come to play. The other thing is actually CGA don't have level 6 on Talia. If you have at least at the start of that fight, which means you don't have the Weaver's Wall to join the fight even more quickly. So that kind of led to a couple of extra factors in that play getting just a little bit messy. And these are teams which have shown a little bit of that mess through this split so far. They have been willing to fight, especially CGA. That's something of an identity for them as a team, which we've seen for many years at this point. But in this kind of game, which is so important, reminder, if AXIZ win this, they get that head-to-head and they leapfrog CGA in those standings. They put the playoffs hopes and dreams into question a little more, and that mess will not be helping them. Now, we've got a couple of people roaming mid. Swamp, of course, having Flash, having Ultimate, but how much can they really get out of Slayer here with the summoners available?
They're bringing more and more people. It's a party in the mid lane. It's a bit of a J-Ram. But Swamp now hovering into the territory of Kasin thinks better than trying to take that relic back.
Very nearly lands the wind becomes lightning. That could have been an interesting fight. I think it would have been a flash force, but not much more outside of that. So, fairly close game. Gold getting shown around onto a couple of these assassins now. Akali on one side, Zed on the other. I really hope we get an Akali versus Zed 1v1 at some point in this game. That would be so cool to see. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of Pro League, seeing those crazy high mobility fights. We're going to have a bit more of a grouped one, though, potentially around Herald. We're starting to fight.
Yeah, there goes the Weaver's Wall. Cocoon finding the nice separation, and this could just be all the zone control they need to pick up this Herald and run, complete the heist. They still want to fight. Nemo getting chunked out, doesn't have the 6, and that is going to be the first kill going over to Megaman, but now it's Kasin moving forward. So many low health bars. What can they find? The perfect execution going to be taking them down. That is the 1-for-1 already, but Nap now in the bad spot. Sangchu just auto-attacking him down, but it doesn't end here. Nightmare Kasin going forward. Swamp not in time to back it up, and that is the extended 2-for-2.
I believe it's the 2-for-2. Megaman Sangchu down on one side, and then on the other side, I think we see Nemo fall for the first time alongside Nap. So it's going to be fairly even as these things. But again, just having to ask that question of, hang on, how many people died? Because it's such a split fight coming out of basically both teams showing up to Herald and going, all right, okay, let's just go for this. We can play this. this shows again how much these teams are starting to try and buy into this mess, buy into the scrappiness. But while this is happening, you're starting to trade gold. Once again, the people picking this up primarily are these assassins. Of course, Sanctuary's starting to pick up has picked up 2 kills as well on their own. Gonna go back to this replay, and there are some really important factors we need to take into account of this too, because last time the caveat was actually level 6 wasn't hit by Talia. This time it's actually on the Alistair. This isn't a straight off of Spawn Herald. You've had a couple more waves to pick up if you want that extra XP, but Nemo still hasn't had the ability to get that unbreakable win. Well, Skarner sees that and says, all right, okay, let's get this Alistair out of there. No crazy headbutt pulverized combo coming through. What it does do is buy enough cooldowns to let Nap reach the backline. Nap is a player who has always managed to do that, regardless of iteration of this comp, of this team. He's been doing it on Ornn. He's been doing it on Renekton for years. Shows it on the Akali this split first time, really. And in this fight, you can see, again, the identity of this CGA team finding their way into these team fights and making it a mess, being so entertaining to watch.
Yeah, definitely so. And the big swing coming afterwards, they did get that Herald collected. They got the plates in the mid lane. That's where a large amount of this gold lead does come from. As it stands at 11 minutes, going to be 1.4k in the favor of CGA. But AXIZ on the back half, while we were in the replay there, Nightmare did at least pick up the Mountain Drake for themselves. Okay. So they got a bit of a consolation prize.
Yeah, and it's not going to be the 12-14 dragons, of course. We're still on 12-13.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the 50% increase on that, but still, a Mountain Dragon is one of the best basic stats. Kaken eating a hard trade.
Yeah, there goes the death mark. The stopwatch is there. Dicey can't find the follow-up CC through that stasis. Nema now here to match his counterparts, Rome. A little bit of posturing, but nothing too scary for that Talia.
I mean, that's stopwatch down, and this is stopwatch down before you've gotten Mythic. You are not getting a Zhonya's for another 2,000, 3,000 plus gold. Top lane, that Gwen W, that interaction, that is a really specific interaction, because you see the Shuriken flip come in, and Shuriken flip was obviously cast within that W, but whatever, Sanctuary's just gonna die. We don't even get a chance to talk about that one. But yeah, very specific timing on the Gwen W, because the Shuriken actually hits a little later than you think it should do into the animation. It means that actually Akali's just beyond the Gwen W when it actually registered. It means that Yellow Yoshi gets out of that alive. Ultimate's traded, Ignite's traded. And I am loving how we're seeing, again, a committal to these assassins going in for these big plays.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff. 2014's throwbacks in spades. Not very often you get to see these assassin v assassin matchups in pro these days. Gotta savor every minute of it. And going back to the top lane matchup, it's nice that Yeliashi does have some tools to keep himself safe from that assassin of Nap. Definitely been a player with a lot of room to grow over the split, coming in as that poppy sort of one trick, expand to other tanks. We've seen some of this bruiser play come out, look a lot better.
Then that's a really good point, actually, because, you know, we talked about Megaman because obviously he's on his one trick now, the one which he had when he came into the league. Yellow Yoshi is not on a dissimilar trajectory, right? Where he's come in as a player who is basically touted himself as the best poppy in Japan. And
rightfully so.
He's a hell of a good poppy. He's a very good player of it. But Axe is picking up these players, developing them, allowing them to play these other champions too, and kind of show them the whole toolkit of what you can do within professional League of Legends. Then occasionally letting them go back to it when the time is right. It's been intriguing to see both solo laners joining. Speaking of those solo laners, not going to have the mid laner at this top lane play, but you do have 2 other members helping out Yellow Yoshi.
Yeah, he's really trying to sell this Nap, walking forward, trying to proc that passive, but now the double back starting to get This is so Fiesta.
W's used, okay. When the W's used, that's when you're starting to wonder, but Caston's here to cover the base as well. Both teams knew that a lot of people off the map. What you're typically doing at this point when you are a team on the Rift, when you're looking at, okay, what can we do to track people? Obviously using your vision. There's a lot of vision around bot side from both of these teams, but also you're looking at where people are showing on waves. Both these bot lane waves are getting cleared very quickly because you have a Sivir as well. That tends to make that very easy to just go, okay, right, we're leaving bot lane now. And that means that the supports get freed up. Both these supports want to start roaming around, and both these teams are now going to have to pay very close attention if we are going towards these side lanes, as we thought they might do with AXIZ's comp, where these supports start to factor into it.
Yeah, And these sports going to be the big difference makers with the objectives about to hit the Rift once again. Herald in just 20 seconds. It's not going to be that local gold second Herald like we have on live, so not as valuable. Still in that sort of just turret finisher stage, but without any turrets taken yet, it could still be critical. A bit of a head start before this Ocean Drake does hit the Rift in 30 seconds. I'm curious to see, Namer, if they go towards this.
I'm curious to see what happens just before it, actually, because we've seen that AXIZ have been willing to look for plays which can start blowing some cooldowns. Now, Kakan, of course, doesn't have a stopwatch anymore, does have Exhaust, does have Flash, and has a Crown of the Shadow Queen as well. It's an item which we don't see as much, but when you're into a champion like Zed, who does want to take these incredibly harsh combos, even if it is just like the double shuriken with the shadow combo, that item can get a lot of value. I'm wondering what AXIZ can kind of get at this point before the fight starts to really evolve in earnest. The CGA not committing towards the bot side of the map just yet. They're going to take that second Herald, and of course, again, as you're saying, not quite the updated one just yet. And AXIZ aren't finding themselves being confronted on the Dragon. So while we said these objectives are coming up, nothing's shown for now.
Yeah, no big fights. Nice opening does appear for CGA to get
See what happens if Herald's locked. So Herald's come in. This is just going to the tower come down. Yelioshi over the wall. But I don't think AXIZ have the best angle for this right now. They're going to have to go through some choke points, and that's why Alistair can start threatening huge combos.
Yeah, now it is going to be the fight breaking out in earnest, and it's Kazin actually finding the Gore Drinker heals. I thought he was overextended, but they do find the first blood of the fight. Now many flashes forced into AXIZ territory, but Naps following him with that ultimate, dashing all about the place, as that was a very close zippy zap, but CGA is still thoroughly winning that fight.
Yeah, and I think AXIZ just chose the wrong terrain. Again, when you're retreating from that dragon, if you're trying to find around that mid lane, you need to make sure you have the right angles. Choke points are good for your Sivir, sure, but you're still not having great target access. I thought initially Kassan had made a big mistake. He's on full vision when he gets seen there, but at least he has vision of the enemy team from that on pink ward. This Crescent Guard does ridiculous work to buy time. But while this is happening, look, Sangshu, not autoing, not doing anything. At least Hybrid can start hopping over the wall, committing a W to it. I think the AD carry auto attack uptime is really a testament to, again, the terrain which AXIZ chose to fight on. I think this was in their hands, and this loss of that fight, it's kind of on them choosing to start that fight.
Yeah, and it does look to be the Infernal Drake coming on through, so playing around these now opened up spaces of terrain going to be even more of a critical strategic decision for these teams going forward. Anything that makes it easier for a Sivir or a Zeri to run you down, definitely going to be scary when you're dealing with two teams that play through the 80 carries heavily. But it feels like AXIZ has done a decent job here, Nightmare, sort of slowing the advance. CJ really winning the fights, but at least they've picked up these two Drakes in response.
This is what I really wanted to return to, because yes, you can say that CJ aren't like just blasting the game right now. See what happens if this comes down to a fight around bot side. Doesn't look like it will, but AXIZ, I feel like they really should be starting to move back out into those sidelines at this point. I think the worry they have is that when they've been doing that, the Akali has been winning against the Gwen, and I would imagine the Akali is going to be winning against the Zed too at this point. Akali is just such a strong sideline champion, and that has been having a very good game so far. He's actually built up the Night Harvester. I've seen a couple of opinions on this item compared to the Proto Belt. Akali doesn't really care for ability haste. It's not really an item which works for her in terms of those raw stats. The active is very good when it's now had the lowered cooldown from the last time it was touched, but not having the extra magic penetration when you're kind of not gone towards that Proto Belt makes you feel a bit bad, but it doesn't actually matter so much in this game because Naf's just been playing so damn well. It doesn't actually matter about the itemization. It's still AP on the board.
Yeah, getting bigger and bigger is this Akali. Played through lane very well, has that CS, and has both sums ready to come in and wreak some havoc once the time comes. AXIZ trying to position around this top river, try and find some sort of a pick. Definitely feels like they're a bit aimless right now,
but
sort of
look what AXIZ
waiting
is doing.
for the game to come to them.
They're just letting the Akali go into a side lane and say, well, that's one side of the map won. That's really been the tail of it right now. So for AXIZ, is going to be a problem-solving measure in what can we do about this Akali that's breaking up in our side lane play, and what can we do to just kind of nullify that? Because the problem is, if they wanted to go towards side lanes and they're losing one of them, their game plan becomes that much harder. They're down a lot of gold. They don't have their primary win condition in a good spot right now, and that is worrying. CJ actually, at this point, feeling fairly comfortable, winning the group fights, winning in other areas of the game too.
Yeah, we'll see if they can pull a guaranteed, or rather an iconic CGA moment and find a way to lose this game from this position. But Nap doing a great job in the side lane, so slippery and hard to catch, as you point out, means that AXIZ really doesn't have a good answer. Yeliashi now back on that Mythic, but Nap, a half an item ahead, has that Alternator on top of the Night Harvester, going to be so much burst, and then can just go in the Shroud before Yeliashi can really vamp back off of him, gives him a lot of space, but here they come down into the side lane trying to find him.
Oh, there's no support coming either. This could be a dead Kali. See if the W cooldown's there. What can you do about this?
Yeah, it's going to be R1 into the Shroud, just trying to stay evasive. R2 sure can flip. You can't catch that ninja today.
Okay, so that's going to be the perfect execution blown. That is like effectively the cookie cutter escape from the Skarner at that point. You need to get that R2, the untargeted dash, use the W to buy time for it. So Nap, without that tool, but oh, it's a good shove. What's going to come of that?
It's actually going to force Swamp's flash. It was the nice follow-up coming through from Hybrid, and now Yeliashi chunked out before the Drake does spawn in just 5 seconds. That's a nice health bar advantage already coming up for CGA, and that's the R1 coming out from Yeliashi.
Yeah, I'm about to say, getting that needlework out of Yeliashi really big. That's a huge amount of damage and teamfight threat now gone. We thought that was going to be important for the Akali to waste that ultimate, but AXIZ lose their positioning and don't get towards it.
Yeah, they grab up that Infernal Drake, and now they might just grab up the kills as well. Yeliashi going to go down inside that Shroud. Hybrid chasing with the flash to find one onto Swamp. He goes next. At least going to find the 2. Maybe could continue the chase down or even look at a Baron angle from here. CGA really feeling themselves, looking like more and more their game to lose. As Sangchu forced to flash away as well.
Oh, Sangchu just trying to greed for those wolves, trying to take away some of the collateral damage that's going to come through from CGA. When you win big fights, tend to run into the enemy jungle, take their resources with them too. And CGA find themselves winning another grouped fight in this all-important game. You know, it's a little early to start talking about whether this is the do or die moment, but getting this win against direct competition in regards to this close playoffs race is so important. We talked about the cooldowns that were blown just before this fight came up, and with that needlework down, yeah, I really think AXIZ were struggling in that team fight damage department. Once again, Sangchu is actually not auto-attacking for most of this fight. Once that Gwen is focused down without really CGA suffering anything for it, that's effectively fight over. AXIZ really struggling to hard commit to a fight and get Sangchu involved.
Yeah, it's looking dire for AXIZ. Will at least answer back a top lane tier 1 here, and maybe Megaman could look for more, but doesn't have a good idea of who's around, so can't commit to it. Just has to back off with the tiniest of consolation prizes, but 6k the gold lead here, and critically, it's a 3-item Zeri for Hybrid.
Yeah, and Hybrid has been just the more impactful AD carry. Part of that's draft, part of that's playstyle, but I do really feel like at this point, you have 3 items on the Zeri who hasn't been struggling to do damage. AXIZ, if they weren't losing these fights before, even if they start getting loads of key cooldowns, if you don't get onto this Zeri, fight is just over.
Yeah, and we all know it's the Hybrid show when CGA plays. They're going to be using all these tools that they've drafted, whether it is that Crescent Guard or the Headbutt Pulve, whatever you need to keep Hybrid safe, allow him to play up and play scary like he is right now, chunking out Dicey, just looking for the vision. CGA in a very, very nice position to take this Baron once they can find some sort of a pick, or just leave Nap content in that side lane to continue punishing AXIZ while they babysit it.
Funny thing which happened there. So Skarner has a mini shield, right? I just completely forgot that there's a part of Zeri's kit where you get to steal shields.
Oh, right. I forgot there's more stuff that she needs. I completely forgot
that happens. Well, we'll have to, I guess, track that as it goes through. So it's just like, huh, what's that a particle effect around Hybrid? Wait, he just stole Skarner's shield. I just completely forgot about that. Funny what happens.
You get movement speed when you steal it, too.
You get like 10% movement speed. You get to steal him out of the shield that comes through. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, okay. Well, that was a quick blast from the past for me.
We've been through like 10 variations of Zeri already, so sometimes it's hard to remember what she does.
Every patch since release, Zeri has been featured on it. Been a champion which is a little bit hard to hit the mark. Now, I actually don't dislike Zeri as a champion. I think that the mechanics are quite intriguing. Do I think it's balanced? No, but I think it's interesting for now. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Season 5 champions, which took a little while for them to be balanced too. If you remember the old days of Azir and Rek'Sai, Tahm Kench, Kalista, champions that really took a while to come back in line. Speaking of Season 5, that's where Zed was actually around for a little while too. Was a bit of an answer into champions like Talia, which started coming up a little later into the meta. But in this game, when you have the Zhonyas and that crown, it's a little hard to find your all-ins now. And while we are in those side lanes, you've actually, as CGA, won enough of the big fights. You managed to survive through to a point where your side lanes are fine, and now you can start looking for the fights all on your own.
Yep, that is going to be Sangchu's ultimate popped. It's not going to be available for any sort of forward motion. Not that we've seen AXIZ really try and make a successful forward push in the past 15 minutes or so. But this opens up so much space now for CGA to move into the opposing territory, clear out this vision. Although it looks like they're content to just reset and spend their gold with this Drake coming up in 45 seconds. Keep that focus on the bot side where Nap has been so effective in keeping priority for the past few minutes.
Game's slowed down a little bit. Feels like CGR are playing around objective timers. Not really looking for killer blows themselves. I think they could have afforded to be a little bit more aggressive with their gold lead, but still, playing it safe and playing around the objective timers is by no means a bad way to play the game. It's a very consistent way to close out games, and they're certainly hitting the items to look to do that in the next fight. Nap is maybe doing a bit of cooldown counting, seeing how far Yellow is going to shove up, and looking for an all. He actually hasn't managed to look for an all-in for a little while. Let's see if he can do anything here.
Yeah, just gonna sort of watch Yellow walk on by.
Okay.
That's
just a bit of sleuthing, and that's all we're gonna see.
Not the most exciting Akali gameplay, but we'll get to it. He's been dynamite in the team fights. I'm sure we'll see some more of it, especially now that this Drake is up. Although, AXIZ, this is sort of like the Hail Mary. It looks like they're pinging towards that Baron, but not going to start it. So that Infernal Drake just goes by without any response from AXIZ.
Yeah, and that's the state which AXIZ are in. It's like, wow, we're going to not fight around these objectives. Woo, we can play side lanes. Wait, no, we cannot do that. There's only so many times we can say that this game. So, that's kind of just what's happening with AXIZ. They don't get to commit towards that dragon. They lose out on that, and they are just losing across the board right now. And it's a little sad to see from AXIZ, who actually have managed to pick up a number of good wins this split. They've not nearly been as in a dire state as we thought they would be, as a bottom 2 team, one that was kind of really struggling to stay relevant. This team is actually one which is fighting for playoffs, but for them in one of these push and shove games, haven't managed to find many answers. It's a little sad because we'd come to expect maybe a little more from them.
Yeah, especially when you see Megaman locking in the Zed, the early lane action, the 7 HP, walk away from the explosion cool guy moment that he had. It felt like we were in for a lot more of a treat game, but there is still time. You do have this late game silver scaling. Maybe they can find something, but not when you get chunked out and engaged on like that. Chase all the way back to the base gates. That's the first kill already over to CGA, and it could just be the death knell coming through as that's big cooldowns blown in the back half as well for AXIZ. Jungler down, no ult on Yellow Yashi. Can they contest this Baron? It looks like CGA is revving up to start.
You have yourself a death mark and a dream. Not even sure Megaman can really commit to this. I think this will be it. This will be the play which finally puts the game to bed. And CGA, they find themselves, they fight on objective timers, but away from the objectives themselves. They get my priority, manage to get themselves that Baron, and that should honestly now be the closing of this game.
Yeah, the answer was... the answer was one mid
bonus
lane
points
turret.
if you get to Photoshop August's face onto the presenter, but...
Oh, true. We do have a replay here, Nightmare of a fight. A sad fight it was.
And this is the point where this is one of the few times where Sanctuary's actually managed to sit and auto attack, but this is after the gold league's already been established. If this happened 15 minutes ago, maybe it gets a little closer, but CJ playing around their power spikes, playing around those group fights, and now are in a position... I love that. I love that so much. Shout out to Crest, who's been producing so much for us and is our creative director. And creative ever is he. AXIZ, we've been asking for some creativity. Haven't really managed to find anything of the sort. And slowly and surely falling towards the death of this game.
Yeah, bleeding out, it feels like, as we move towards this 30-minute mark. The biggest answer has really been just some consolation turrets, and that's not enough to give yourself a solid presence. And it just feels like this composition, if it can't play through the side lanes, I mean, we beat it on home, it doesn't really have a home in the 5v5, so maybe you can count on some Sivir turtling and a dream, bring it back Season 3 style, but we spent a lot of time this game, Nymera, looking back towards the past because the future does not look very bright for AXIZ, especially as their base begins to fall around them.
Well, Nema having fairly low HP, maybe there's something that could have worked that, but actually Cassin, a little bit separated. This could be a fun pick.
Fast Scorpion brings Warrior into the enemy base, but look at that zap coming over the wall to actually equalize things. Hybrid doesn't connect on the ultimate, but Dicey moves forward to find something. Nap, however, wreaking havoc in the back line. Akali popping off, Yellow Yashi against the world. I don't think it'll be enough, although the needlework finding something. Maybe he can sustain through. Dodges the seismic shove, but cannot dodge his death, as now Megaman rejoins the party, but the Weaver's Wall coming all the way out, coming all the way through. Cocoon forcing the flash, forcing down the inhibitor. CGA continue to dominate through this fight.
Oh, and that's going to be the base broken, inhibitor falls, and this is what you can do when you're ahead of this composition. AXIZ had to blow so much onto a Jin Zhao, onto the jungler. That's not a priority target. That's not the backline which you want to reach, and I was very much worried when it came to the 5v5s. How do you reach the targets you really want to through this jungle and support when you have the Jin Zhao ultimate, when you have the Alistar blocking too? And the question is, with great difficulty, this is a little bit of a misposition from Cassin. I've seen a couple of aggressive positioning moves from Cassin which have almost been punished, but he's been getting enough HP back for the Gold Drinker to make it just about worth it. And while Sivir actually did manage to do some damage in that fight, it just really isn't nearly enough at this point.
No, and it was a nice little reflex move from Kassin as well to get back over the wall with the dash coming on out, but not nearly enough for AXIZ as we do move into the death knell period, the rollover and decay period. As Dicey looking for something, though, a little bit of life still being shown. That's more of a priority target. They find the ultimate onto Nap, they skewer him and drag him back, but now the Shroud into the ultimate, that perfect execution, means he can just keep on living while Hybrid free fires, while he chases back Swamp, while he crushes the Scorpion underneath his heel. And it's just going to be more of the same. CGA not ever looking like they're really sweating in these fights. It's Cocoon going so far back to reach this wave, and it looks like they might just go for the end right here, right now.
Oh, so few cooldowns to play around. AXIZ gonna have to watch the arrayed members of Crest Gaming app crush down their Nexus and jump ahead of them even further in the standings.
Yeah, that will be the Nexus falling. We were a little bit worried because if there was any team that was going to lose this game, it would be CGA, but they came through with the heads up this time around and did wind up taking it on home. They will hold on to that 5th place position quite strongly, picking it